What's up, awesome YouTubers? Ryan1988 or Justin back here to do a video for you all. I hope you're all doing well out there. And today I'm here to talk about why I fell in love with movies. And what movies, or some movies, I fell in love with. Why I love movies, I guess, should be the question. Yeah, why I love movies. Um, and, you all have known me for almost 20 years. This channel is all about movies. Um, and, you know, I think about my life and I think about, growing up. And a good portion of that was watching films. And rather it was Disney movies when I was a kid or getting introduced to classics or to the horror movie genre later on. Um, you know, I just grew up with film. Um, and one of the things I remember the most is always going to the video stores and renting those movies, rather they were the new release titles or movies that I watched countless times. There's always those movies that me and my family just would rent all the time. You could see it so many times, or we could watch it so many times, and just fell in love with it. It never got old for us, and those are movies that I still have in my collection today. Um, I really got to give a shout out to my mom because she was and is a big movie fan. Um, and growing up, visiting her, going to the video store and buying used movies was something that we did all the time. Going back to like Friday nights, we'd either rent the movies or we would buy a whole bunch of VHS or DVDs. And they were always the previously used movies at the video store, and we had never seen the movies, but you know um, so they were new to us, and I love that. Absolutely love that. And then getting food afterwards and then going home and, eating and watching, the two movies that we bought. Um, that was always a fun memory for us, for me and my family, my siblings, my mom, and myself. So absolutely love that. I remember, and I still go to the movies today, but I remember, having, gone to the movies countless times as a kid, as a teenager, as an adult, still an adult now, but especially growing up, as a kid, I went to, the same theater, my childhood theater, over and over and would see, some of the latest Disney movies that came out or kids movies. And then as I got older, it was seeing, the latest Harry Potter movies, the latest Star Wars movies, whatever the big blockbuster was. We'd either see it in, the holiday season or when summertime was approaching, the summer season was approaching, because, you always had that first movie that was coming out in the summer that was the big event. And I saw a lot of them. Shout out to my dad, because we went to the movies a lot when I was a kid, and he took us to the movies a lot. Growing up again in this theater, I saw a lot of movies with him. And eventually I would see movies by myself or go with friends. And it was always such a special moment. um I would be, that, teenager that would go to the movies every weekend, to the point where, they knew my face. They knew who I was. If I did not go for a couple weeks, they questioned why I wasn't there. So I love that. Video stores, going back to that, huge thing. I again would go to the video store every weekend when I was, a teenager. And if I didn't go one weekend or two weekends, they questioned where I was. So, I love movies. I will always love movies. I will always love the physical media format and being a collector like I am now, you see in this room. And you don't see everything. You all have seen the room, but there's just stuff everywhere. And so I'm a big movie fan, and I'll always have the memories seeing so many movies in theaters, being let's see, I was probably 7 years old, almost 7 years old, seeing Toy Story for the first time on the big screen, and seeing or seeing the idea that your toys come to life when you're out of the room. Like that was just magical for me. And of course I remember going home thinking, are my toys, are they going to come alive when I'm out of the room? That was my imagination as a kid. um Seeing X-Men in 2000 for the first time, opening weekend, it wasn't the first superhero movie, but it was definitely one of the first superhero movies to revive that subgenre that was lost for a while. You had Blade prior, which, Blade is a great movie, but as a kid, X-Men was one of those films that I just or X-Men was one of those cartoons, and those characters were some of those first, characters that I just fell in love with. And so seeing a live action X-Men movie was a big thing for me. Um I mentioned Harry Potter, Harry Potter is a part of my life. I read the books and grew up with the film series, and then now we have a new television show coming out, which can be for new generations of kids. But Harry Potter for me, those movies were a big part of my life. There's a lot of movies and a lot of memories I have. Loving film and falling in love with films. um I, as a kid, loved Disney movies. That, like many of you, um, and I still love Disney movies. But for me, Disney movies meant so much to me as a kid because going through cancer and going through chemotherapy, you know, so many times, I would be, in a room for a very long time. And so, 5 years old, 6 years old, even before I was five, going through this, and you're hooked up to these machines, and you have to um grab a kid's attention during this time. Like, what will they gravitate towards? And I watched a lot of Disney movies, and a lot of classic kids movies that um took me away from such a you know dark time in my life, to where I was able to just, look at a screen and just imagine I was there in that world for that brief moment. Um, so, again, I love movies. I love them for many reasons. Um, I will always love movies. And again, they were a big part of my childhood, big part of my teen years, and they're a big part of my years now. And I will always love them. So, what I want to do now is go through movies that really have had an impact on me in my life. I don't have any Disney movies, but I mentioned stuff like Toy Story. And of course, there's so many other movies that have created an impact in my life. But the first one I could think of is Alien from Ridley Scott. I just fell in love with this movie right away, and I still love this movie now. Alien Day is coming up, so I'm going to be watching that one. And this is just a staple. Um, the Star Wars movies. I pretty much love all Star Wars movies, but we're talking about the original Star Wars trilogy here. I fell in love with these movies later on in life, in my teen years. I remember seeing Revenge of the Sith, and I'm like, I want to go back and watch all the other Star Wars movies. So, I bought all of them, and this is the despecialized edition. These aren't, available worldwide, but I have them. They look and sound great, and it's just great to own these. And of course, I own the 4Ks, but these are the original despecialized editions. So, Indiana Jones, again, another franchise I fell in love with later on, but I remember as a kid watching, the first two movies especially, and then watching, the third movie, and just being fascinated with these films. But growing up and watching them over the years, I've loved them so much, and even my least favorite movie in the franchise, I really enjoy. So, love Indiana Jones. Jaws, of course, Jaws has to be on this list for me. The whole movie's fantastic. I love watching documentaries and making ofs, and this is a great making of documentary on how this movie almost failed, how the shark was breaking down, and you know, you just never knew how this movie was going to turn out. And it's this classic movie now. The opening scene is one of the most terrifying scenes in a movie. And I just still love this movie today. Like, as a whole, this movie is a classic and I love it. My favorite movie of all time and my favorite horror movie of all time is Halloween. And this movie made me fall in love with film. I love, again, making of documentaries, and Halloween's making of is just great. I love from the early days of them writing the script to the movie being filmed and then the release of the movie, like everything about Halloween I just love so much, and still love the movie today. And again, it was one of the first horror movies that made me fall in love with the genre, and it was one of the first movies that made me fall in love with film and filmmaking. Another classic Ridley Scott movie is Blade Runner. Absolutely love Blade Runner. I've always found this movie to be good, but as I'm getting older, obviously, like I understand more of the movie, and I just love it so much. It is such a great classic movie. To think that this movie bombed at one point is just insane, but now it's a film that so many people love, and I love Blade Runner. Rocky, the Rocky collection is great, but that original movie just, I love, the story behind the film, and how this is what made Sylvester Stallone the person that he is, the actor that he is, getting that script out there, and finally getting the movie made. Like, there's huge inspiration there, and it just shows that, like, you work hard, and you know you just stay determined, I guess, and your dream comes true. And that was, Sylvester Stallone not only being able to be in Rocky, but also have the script out there and have it made. So, but I love the Rocky franchise. It's one of my favorites, good, inspiring movies. James Cameron's Terminator, all time favorite. Love it. Um, from the casting, the acting, the music, and, in my opinion, a great love story. It's a sci-fi horror movie, but my favorite thing about the film is the love story here, between Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor. And lastly, one of my favorite teen movies, and just one of my favorite movies in general, and that is Some Kind of Wonderful. So I watched this one last month, and it still holds up today. It's still one of my top three favorite movies of all time. I forgot Fright Night, but Fright Night's in the top three. It's Halloween, this, and Fright Night, the original Fright Night. But Some Kind of Wonderful. John Hughes' best written film. I know that's crazy. I love a lot of John Hughes movies, but I really love the characters in this movie. I love Howard Dutch's directing. I love the acting in this. Like, you just get invested in this movie from beginning to end. So, those are movies that I just love so much. These are films that made me fall in love with films, with movies, and I'll continue loving movies and rewatching so many favorites of mine, and then watching possibly new favorites of mine. Um, I will always love movies. So that is many reasons why I love movies. I don't know what this topic, I don't know what the title of the video will be, but I wanted to do this. I thought this would be fun. It's not a, a top 10 video or anything like that, but I wanted to get something out here, and this clicked in my head and I was like, let's talk about why I love movies and the memories I have with movies. So and then movies that I love. And there's so many other movies I love. But that is just kind of a stack of movies that I love. So, and why I collect physical media. Physical media can be another topic for another video. I'll probably save that. But there's many reasons I love physical media that I mentioned in this video. So, might save that for a little bit down the road for a video. But stay tuned for that. I hope you enjoyed this very kind of laid back, casual video. But why do you love movies? Let me know down below. So, as always, y'all are awesome, y'all rock. Aim with the positive, out with the negative. I'll talk to you later, and much love to you all.